What if the American dream could be revoked with the stroke of a pen? Imagine rising from the ashes of royal rejection, only to be thrown into the fire of U.S. immigration chaos. And now, picture Meghan Markle, the woman who once captivated the world in a royal wedding watched by over 2 billion people, standing on a Los Angeles sidewalk, tears in her eyes, clutching a folder stamped with a red government seal. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. This isn't a tabloid headline. It's the chilling reality. Because today, we're pulling back the curtain on a story more twisted than a royal scandal and more explosive than a campaign trail vendetta. The story of how one of the most famous couples on the planet, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, found themselves at the heart of a visa war, with Donald Trump holding the sword. But how did we get here? How did Prince Harry, a man born into privilege, titles, palaces, and protected lineage, end up being treated like an immigration liability? How did Meghan, once the symbol of modern American royalty, go from Hollywood deals to hiring high-powered attorneys just to keep her husband on U.S. soil? And what exactly is in that sealed manila envelope that has Meghan shaking? You're about to find out. But first, we need to go back to where this all began. And why this moment, right now, has the potential to shatter everything. Because beneath the surface of red carpet appearances, Netflix documentaries, and public smiles lies a legal and political time bomb, and the clock just hit zero. The dream that became a warning sign. From the moment Harry and Meghan stepped away from royal duties in 2020, they presented a vision. They weren't running. They were reinventing. California sun, Netflix deals, a mansion in Montecito, podcasts, memoirs. Freedom. No more protocol. No more press restrictions. Just their story, told their way. But while the world watched the spectacle, and the headlines swung from adoration to backlash, one critical detail went unnoticed. Prince Harry's immigration status. It seemed trivial at the time. After all, he was a royal. Surely the U.S. had rolled out the red carpet? But what if I told you that red carpet was made of thin ice? The silent war brewing beneath. Behind the scenes, powerful forces were watching. Former White House officials, conservative think tanks, immigration attorneys. Why? Because Prince Harry had made a mistake, one that millions had seen on TV and read in his own book Spare. He admitted to drug use, cocaine, cannabis, mushrooms, and under U.S. immigration law, even a suggestion of past drug use, especially when voluntary and public, can be grounds for visa denial or revocation. And yet, he was here, living in the U.S., thriving, smiling. It didn't add up. So legal action began. A Freedom of Information Act lawsuit was filed to force the Department of Homeland Security to reveal what Harry did or did not disclose on his visa application. Because if he lied, that's fraud. And fraud is grounds for removal. And then came Trump. Now, here's where things take a brutal turn. In the early stages, this case was largely quiet. A procedural matter. Slow, legal, and dense. But when Donald Trump got wind of the situation, it detonated. Why? Because Trump had been waiting for a high-profile, symbolic immigration case to relaunch his campaign narrative. He didn't just want to target immigrants. He wanted to target elite immigrants, the ones who, in his view, got special treatment. And Harry? He was perfect. A British prince who publicly admitted to drugs, a Hollywood lifestyle, a liberal wife who'd spoken out against Trump before. The optics were too good to resist. And so, Trump began making calls. First to allies in DHS, then to immigration attorneys connected to his network. Finally, to his media allies, who began floating the question, should Prince Harry be deported? It was no longer a legal inquiry. It became a national debate. And Meghan? She saw it all coming, but couldn't stop it. Meghan's meltdown, behind closed doors. According to one insider close to the Montecito inner circle, Meghan had a full-blown emotional collapse the moment the DHS memo was mentioned in court filings. She was furious, the source said. Not just scared. Furious. She kept saying, they're using him. They're using us. And in her eyes, this wasn't just about a visa. It was revenge. Payback for speaking out. For leaving the firm. For daring to be American royalty, without the crown. But behind the fury, there was fear. Because if Harry's visa was revoked, he would have to leave immediately. No appeals. No drawn-out hearings. No goodbye Netflix series. Just a plane, a passport, and a forced goodbye. Why this story matters now? You may be thinking, okay, but isn't this just another scandal? It's not. This is different. Because this time, it's not tabloids spinning speculation. It's the Department of Homeland Security, under pressure, reviewing classified documents about a prince's visa application and possibly preparing a revocation letter. It's the potential collapse of Harry and Meghan's U.S. foundation, the only country where they are free to tell their truth. It's the political weaponization of fame, royalty, and confession. And it's happening right now. A royal in exile. Again, here's the cruel irony. Harry left the UK to escape press torment, family rigidity, and royal control. He came to America to build a new life. But now, the very freedom he fought for, the openness, the honesty, the confessions, may be the weapon used against him. Because in being transparent about his past, he may have opened the door for deportation. And Meghan? She's watching the country she trusted turn against her. One headline at a time. One lawsuit at a time. One tweet at a time. But the real bombshell is still coming. Because even as this story explodes in the press, even as speculation spreads about deportation orders, secret court filings, and a Trump vendetta, there's one document no one has seen. A sealed report, filed under emergency protection, allegedly containing the true contents of Harry's immigration records. And according to one legal insider, that document contains a signed statement that could immediately trigger removal. Meghan knows it. Her lawyers know it. And Trump? He's waiting for it to drop. Because when it does, it's not just Harry who could be deported. It's their entire empire that could fall. And then, there's the envelope. Seen in Meghan's hands, outside a law office, caught in a single blurry photo. But what's inside? A deportation warning? A red flag notice? A court summons? No one knows. But insiders say that's the moment everything changed. Because what Meghan found inside that manila envelope would shatter the illusion of safety and ignite a battle that may end with Harry in handcuffs. And as for what came next, no one, not even Meghan, saw it coming. Could one envelope really bring down a prince? That's the question people started whispering behind the glossy doors of Montecito. The answer? Absolutely. Because the envelope wasn't just a warning. It was a trigger, a fuse. And what it ignited was a firestorm that would scorch the highest halls of power in Washington and threaten to rip apart the life Harry and Meghan had so carefully constructed. The lawsuit that no one expected to go anywhere. Let's rewind. Before the headlines. Before Trump's tweet. Before Meghan's trembling hands holding that ominous government-stamped envelope. It all began with something small. A simple Freedom of Information Act request. A FOIA, as the legal world calls it. Filed not by a mainstream media outlet, not by a rival royal, not even by a political figure, but by a conservative policy institute based in Washington, D.C. A group with a reputation for digging and a direct pipeline to Republican lawmakers and Trump-era immigration hardliners. At first, no one noticed. It was just another paperwork shuffle through the slow-moving, red-taped world of federal bureaucracy. But the language of the request was specific. Surgical. They wanted Prince Harry's immigration documents, his visa application, and more importantly, his answers. Had he ever admitted to drug use? Had he ever lied about it? Was his entry to the United States in violation of the Immigration and Nationality Act? Now pause. Ask yourself this. Why would a U.S.-based political group care about a British prince's immigration paperwork? Because to them, Harry wasn't just a royal. He was a symbol, a figurehead of elite privilege, globalism, liberal media access, and most importantly, the kind of immigrant they didn't want. An immigrant who, if he were anyone else, might never have gotten in. And if they could prove that, they could set an example. They could spark a national debate. And Donald Trump? He was listening. From legal curiosity to political dynamite, the FOIA request sat untouched for months. Then something changed. An internal memo, later leaked, revealed that the Department of Homeland Security had flagged the request for high-profile sensitivity. Translation? They knew if this got out, it would make headlines. So they stalled, delayed, dodged. But the Conservative Institute wasn't backing down. So they sued. That's right. They filed an actual lawsuit against the Department of Homeland Security, demanding the release of Prince Harry's immigration records. And that lawsuit? It became the spark. The moment the story shifted from a legal technicality to a political landmine. Because once it hit the court docket, reporters noticed. Fox News picked it up first, then British tabloids, then Meghan's PR team. And within 48 hours, the White House was asked to comment. Think about that. A member of the British royal family, living in the U.S. on a visa that may have been illegally obtained, suddenly became the talking point of a presidential briefing. Inside the Montecito panic room, sources close to the Sussexes say Meghan went ice cold when the story broke. She wasn't just blindsided, she was livid. Not because she didn't know about Harry's past. She knew exactly what he'd said in his memoir. She knew the Oprah confessions, the drug stories, the wild nights in Vegas, the rehab revelations. But she thought it was behind them, packaged, edited, monetized, and most importantly, forgiven. But now, it was being reframed, weaponized, dug up by people with power and political muscle. And worst of all, they weren't just coming after Harry. They were coming after her. The internal debate at DHS, play politics or play law. Meanwhile, inside Washington, the DHS legal team was scrambling. On one hand, they knew this was politically radioactive. On the other hand, they were bound by law. Because if Harry had lied on his visa application, even by omission, it was a federal offense. Lying about drug use? That's a visa violation. Admitting to it publicly after the fact? That's grounds for review. And so, an internal tug-of-war began. Do they release the documents? Do they redact? Do they protect him? Or do they let the public and the courts decide? Pressure mounted. Trump's allies began whispering. Leaked emails hit the press. And behind closed doors, DHS officials started speaking in phrases like legal exposure, possible revocation, urgent review. Meghan's legal response: fight, spin, or vanish. Meghan's team went into overdrive. Attorneys were hired. Statements were drafted. Threats were made to media outlets, legal analysts, and even YouTubers who speculated too freely. But the damage was done. Because the lawsuit, now covered by every major news outlet, forced the Biden administration to respond. Suddenly, the White House was in the awkward position of either protecting a foreign royal accused of misleading immigration authorities, or appearing to back Trump's political hit job. No good options. And Trump? He smiled. Because he'd waited for a moment like this. One that was flashy, symbolic, and perfectly aligned with his return to the border message. Trump's first strike, the Florida rally mic drop. It happened at a Florida rally. Mid-speech. Crowd roaring. Trump looked down, shook his head dramatically, then said, "I heard a certain prince, you know, the guy with the book and the drama. He lied on his visa to get into our country. Not good. Not fair. Not legal. Maybe we'll take a look at that real soon, folks." The crowd exploded. Meghan reportedly threw her phone across the room when she saw the clip. But the political tide had already shifted. Now it wasn't just about one visa. It was about the message. The narrative was this: if a regular American gets arrested for lying on a form, why does Harry get to stay? And just like that, Harry's name was dragged into the center of a national policy war. And Meghan? She became the collateral damage. The conservative media frenzy. The headlines came fast and brutal. Harry lied. Should he be deported? Immigration fraud or royal favoritism? Trump eyes action against Prince Harry's visa. Suddenly, Meghan and Harry weren't untouchable. They were open season. Late-night shows mocked them. Legal pundits dissected visa clauses. Former ICE agents went on cable news to say, "If it were me, I'd be knocking on his door." The envelope. And then came the envelope. Delivered by courier. Marked with the emblem of the U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia. Inside, a copy of the lawsuit. A request for official comment from Meghan's attorneys. And something else. A warning. It read, failure to respond within the designated time frame may result in default judgment. Legal language, sure. But for Meghan, it was a scream. This wasn't speculation anymore. It wasn't a media game. It was real. And if she didn't act fast, the legal system would move without her. But what came next would change everything. Because while Meghan called her attorneys, and Harry went silent, and social media frothed with hashtags like #DeportTheDuke and #MeghanPanics, a new motion was filed. one that wasn't public, one that came in under seal. And according to legal insiders, it contained something that DHS didn't want out, something that could not only validate the entire lawsuit, but prove that Harry's visa should never have been approved, because inside that motion was a name, a witness, and a statement that would light Washington on fire. Can a single check mark on a government form destroy a royal life? It's a question no one expected to ask about a prince, especially not this prince. But that's where we are. Because the deeper investigators dug into Prince Harry's immigration status, the more unsettling the reality became. It wasn't just about fame. It wasn't just about politics. It was about a very specific and very exclusive visa, one designed not for royalty, not for memoirs, not for scandal, but for extraordinary individuals in the fields of science, art, education, business, or athletics. A visa called the O1. The visa built for rock stars, scientists, and apparently, royals. Let's break it down. The O1 visa is often referred to as the genius visa, not because of its name, but because of who it's meant for. To qualify, a foreign national must demonstrate a level of national or international acclaim, extraordinary ability in their field, and, most importantly, sustained recognition. This isn't for someone who had a few good years in the tabloids. It's for Nobel Prize winners, Academy Award nominees, Olympic athletes, CEOs, people who've pushed boundaries in their field and are actively contributing to the American landscape. But somehow, Prince Harry got it. But was it legal? Or was it special? On paper, sure, Prince Harry checks some boxes. He's famous. He was born into global recognition. He created the Invictus Games. He gave high-profile speeches. He published a best-selling memoir. But none of that guarantees an O1. Not without documentation. Not without proof. Here's where things get tricky. To get the O1, Harry would have had to submit letters of endorsement from experts in his field, proof of international recognition, and, crucially, a sworn statement that he met all moral and legal requirements for entry into the United States. That last part, that's the danger zone. Because right there, on the visa form, is a question that changes everything. Have you ever used, possessed, or been addicted to drugs? And according to Spare, Oprah, multiple interviews, and his own podcast appearances, Harry has been very, very honest about drug use. He smoked weed in Kensington Palace. He snorted cocaine at Eton. He took psychedelics. He said, and this is verbatim, "It was important to me. It changed my view of the world." He wrote that magic mushrooms helped him process trauma. Powerful, vulnerable, human, but also a potential visa violation. The gray area, honesty in public versus honesty on paper. So now the question becomes, did Harry admit to drug use on his visa application? Or did he only open up about it after he was safely in the United States? Because here's the legal twist that even seasoned immigration attorneys are debating. If he admitted drug use on the form, his visa likely would have been denied. Plain and simple, the U.S. has strict drug-related entry restrictions, even for cannabis use in countries where it's legal. If he didn't admit it, and then later confessed to it in interviews, that's immigration fraud, a felony. And yes, grounds for removal. That's not opinion. That's federal law. But wait, can't celebrities get exceptions? The celebrity clause. It doesn't exist. Not legally, but practically? Well, that's where things get murky. There's a long-standing belief that celebrities, especially high-profile, internationally adored figures, get extra consideration during the visa process. Phone calls are made. Names are dropped. Special consular officers get involved. And suddenly, paperwork moves faster. Exceptions are made. Forms go missing. But with Harry, there's a bigger problem. Because if he was granted the visa despite his known drug use, and DHS officials knew about it, then either A, they broke protocol, or B, they covered it up. And now, the cover-up is being uncovered. The secret memo and the whistleblower's claim. Remember that sealed court motion? The one filed anonymously by a DHS insider? We now know what it allegedly contains. A sworn statement by a former immigration officer who processed O1 visa applications for high-profile individuals. His claim? That in late 2019, a red flag visa application came across his desk. It belonged to Henry Charles Albert David Windsor. That's Harry. The officer claims the file was flagged due to media reports of substance use. Standard protocol required either a personal interview or a medical waiver process, but neither happened. Instead, according to the statement, the application was elevated to a supervisory level and approved within 48 hours, without a drug use declaration form. If true, that's massive. That means someone overrode protocol, and that Harry may have been granted entry to the U.S. Not because he qualified, but because he was famous. Meghan's team goes silent. When these allegations hit the legal system, Meghan's team made an unusual move. They didn't deny the claims. They didn't issue a press statement. They issued nothing, which, in legal circles, means one thing. They're strategizing behind the scenes, probably scrambling to prepare a good-faith defense. That Harry believed his prior drug use didn't disqualify him. That he interpreted the question differently. That his statements in the media were artistic or misunderstood. But here's the challenge. He wrote it down in a published memoir, released globally, promoted in interviews. And once it's in print, it becomes evidence. Public reaction, outrage, irony, and memes. The public went wild. Some mocked the situation, posting memes of Harry at the airport in handcuffs. Others expressed outrage that someone who lied on a federal form could still live in a $14 million California mansion while normal immigrants are deported for traffic violations. Even immigration advocates were split. He should be treated like anyone else, one lawyer said. We see families torn apart over minor mistakes. Why should Harry be exempt? The irony? Harry and Meghan once championed immigration reform. They spoke about compassion, openness, and humanity. And now, critics argue, they're fighting to escape the very system they said needed fixing. Inside the legal strategy, delay, dismiss, or disappear. With mounting pressure, Meghan and Harry's lawyers devised three options. Delay the court proceedings, bury the lawsuit in technicalities and red tape. Dismiss the case, argue that the plaintiffs have no standing. Disappear from the headlines, drop all public appearances, go radio silent. But Trump's team? They had other plans. Leaks continued. More DHS emails were subpoenaed, and one internal memo, still partially redacted, appeared to confirm the worst. Subject, visa approval, Henry Windsor. Remarks, flag override approved. No drug waiver filed. That line alone could spell disaster. And then, the red stamp. According to a source familiar with the ongoing lawsuit, another document is now in DHS possession. It's a review order, one that can only be triggered if fraud is suspected post-entry. It's marked top priority, stamped in red, and it authorizes ICE to begin status verification. Translation? Deportation review. Not just a hypothetical, an active review. And Meghan? She knows. Because the day after that red-stamped memo was filed, she was seen leaving a high-profile immigration attorney's office in Beverly Hills. No smiles, no cameras, no statement, just silence. But the clock is ticking. If ICE completes its review and finds cause for revocation, Harry could receive a notice to appear in federal court. Not a royal court, not a book tour, not a palace balcony. A federal courtroom, where he'll be expected to explain why his statements in Spare don't contradict his visa application. And if he fails, he could be removed from the United States within 24 hours. No appeals, no delay, no fanfare, just gone. But what happens if the memo leaks to the public? That's the real question. Because the memo? It's still sealed. For now. But legal experts say it's only a matter of time before it's leaked, whether through political pressure, media subpoenas, or another whistleblower. And when it does, it won't just be Harry under scrutiny. It'll be Meghan, the Biden administration, the State Department, and the entire U.S. immigration system. Because if Harry was allowed to slide through, who else was? And how many others were quietly approved while everyday applicants were denied? But just when you think it couldn't get worse, Meghan received a phone call from someone she hadn't spoken to in nearly 2 years. Someone she thought was still on her side. But the voice on the other end didn't offer comfort. It offered a warning. Because a journalist, one with deep ties to DHS, was about to go public with a story. A story that included exact quotes from Harry's visa application and the name of the person who allegedly signed off on it. And once that name was out, all bets would be off. Because what came next? would shatter the last layer of protection Meghan and Harry had left. When your world is collapsing, who do you call first? For Meghan Markle, it wasn't the palace. It wasn't her publicist. And it certainly wasn't the British press. It was Hollywood. Because when power gets threatened, reputation comes first. And in Meghan's world, perception is everything. But here's the twist. She didn't call to fix things. She called to sell them. We need to own this narrative. That was the first thing Meghan reportedly said to a top Netflix executive, just hours after receiving that sealed red-stamped legal document. Not how do we stop this? Not can we get ahead of it legally? But we need to own this. Before they weaponize it. The tone? Urgent. Not panicked. Strategic. But beneath that polished delivery was something no camera could hide. Fear. Because Meghan had spent years curating an empire. Books, podcasts, content deals, speeches, partnerships. And all of it rested on one fragile pillar. That she and Harry were safe in America. If that went, the whole illusion crumbled. The inner circle activates. She started dialing fast. 1 call to Oprah. 2 to Ari Emanuel, the mega agent behind William Morris Endeavor, the very agency that signed her last year with promises of global domination. 3 to Tyler Perry, the man who once offered them sanctuary in his Beverly Hills estate when the royals cut them loose. But this time, the tone had changed. It wasn't just about image. It was about survival. And Meghan had one goal. Turn the scandal into a spectacle before someone else did. The pitch heard across Los Angeles. Here's what insiders say Meghan proposed in those back-channel calls. A limited series. A docudrama hybrid. A tell-all but legally safe, deep dive into what she described as the dark underbelly of U.S. immigration and how even royalty can be targeted by political games. The title? Tentatively floated as Displaced, a royal story. Yes, you heard that right. Meghan wanted to make a series about Harry's possible deportation, while the actual legal threat was still unfolding in real time. It was risky, brazen, wildly meta, but also on brand. Because for Meghan, the camera wasn't the enemy. It was the shield. Netflix's reaction, shock, and strategy. Executives at Netflix were reportedly stunned. They had already invested millions into the Sussexes brand. From Harry and Meghan, to Live to Lead, to their multi-year production deal. But the deportation scandal? That was uncharted territory. Would audiences see them as victims? Or frauds? Would investors panic? Or lean in? Would Netflix be accused of politicizing immigration at a time when the U.S. was heading into another fiery election season? There was hesitation. Lots of it. But there was also one undeniable truth. Scandal sells. And no one, not even a streaming giant, wants to miss the next wave of global attention. Still, executives had one chilling question. What if he actually is deported before we finish filming? Oprah's advice, speak carefully. In private, Oprah's advice to Meghan was simple and direct. Don't let the anger speak louder than the facts. She reminded Meghan what happened after the interview in 2021, how public sentiment started strong but quickly turned as media narratives fractured. This time, the stakes were even higher. Oprah reportedly advised her to pause on any formal documentary pitches until more legal facts surfaced. But Meghan? She didn't have time to wait. Because someone else was about to speak. The leak threatens to blow everything open. That journalist Meghan had been warned about? He wasn't bluffing. Within 36 hours, a draft article started making rounds among legal blogs and political reporters in D.C. The working title? The Royal Loophole. How DHS quietly approved a flagged visa. The article, sources say, included direct quotes from a partially redacted visa application and the signature of the DHS supervisor who allegedly waved it through. But that's not what had Meghan panicking. It was the mention of emails. Internal DHS communications that suggested Meghan herself had lobbied officials through unofficial channels. Code for Hollywood connections. If true, it would confirm what critics were already whispering, that Harry got special treatment not because of his merit, but because of who he married. Hollywood whispers, is Meghan radioactive? And just like that, the tide shifted. Behind closed doors, talent agencies began re-evaluating Sussex-related projects. Sponsors hesitated. Boardrooms buzzed. Some asked openly, is this going to be another Kanye situation? A PR black hole. Others looked at the data. Harry and Meghan had record-breaking viewership. but with potential legal implications hanging over their heads. Even scandal-hungry studios have limits. And Meghan? She could feel the shift. The calls that used to be returned in 10 minutes now took hours. Some days. One exec even ghosted completely. That silence. It was louder than any headline. The Tyler Perry call, a friend's dilemma. Meghan turned to someone she thought she could still count on. Tyler Perry. After all, he gave them refuge before. Surely, he'd understand. But this time, Perry's response was more measured. According to one insider, he told Meghan, "I'll support you, but I can't make this my fight." Translation? He wouldn't offer another safe house. Not yet, and definitely not publicly. Because even Perry knew, this wasn't just a tabloid scandal anymore. It was a federal issue, and aligning himself too closely could drag his brand and his studios into the mud. The last Hail Mary, a call to an old rival. Here's where things get wild. In a move that stunned even her closest aides, Meghan reached out to a former palace contact, someone she hadn't spoken to since before the Oprah interview, someone once seen as a rival, perhaps even a betrayer. The goal? To explore the possibility of returning to the UK temporarily if Harry's visa was revoked. That's right, Meghan Markle, the woman who burned bridges, spilled secrets, and made a brand out of royal rejection, was considering a partial re-entry into the very system she fought to escape. The irony? Delicious. The desperation? Palpable. But the conversation didn't go as planned. The source on the other end listened politely, then said coldly, "You said you'd never come back." Click. Harry remained silent, but tense. While Meghan scrambled to build media shields, Harry kept a lower profile. Insiders say he barely spoke during those days, walking the Montecito estate alone, hands in pockets, head down. He wasn't just worried. He was ashamed, because he knew the truth. He knew what he wrote. He knew what he signed. And he knew the walls were closing in. A documentary, a lawsuit, and a country waiting to pounce. Despite the media chaos, Meghan pushed forward with a formal proposal. The pitch was submitted, quietly, to Netflix and a handful of other platforms. An episodic series, narrated by Meghan herself, featuring exclusive access to the emotional, legal, and political roller coaster of being a modern royal under siege. But here's the twist. It wouldn't include Harry. At least, not unless he was comfortable participating. That clause told you everything. Because Harry wasn't ready to face the camera again. Not this time. But Meghan wasn't done yet. In a final twist, Meghan began reaching out to immigration advocates and nonprofits, offering to lend her voice to broader reform efforts. She wanted to frame the upcoming legal battle as a bigger issue, one that affects countless immigrants facing unjust scrutiny. The strategy? Reposition herself as a voice for justice, not just a former duchess trying to save her husband. Some bought it. Others didn't. One immigration attorney tweeted, "Nice try, but millions get deported every year without a Netflix deal." Then came the email that changed everything. Just as Meghan prepared to record a statement of solidarity video with a legal advocacy group, an encrypted email arrived from a legal contact in Washington. Short subject line, one attachment. But when she opened the document, everything stopped, because the attachment contained something she never expected to see. A subpoena, issued by a federal judge, requesting her appearance in a closed-door deposition regarding communications with U.S. government officials or representatives prior to and during the O-1 visa approval process. In plain English,